Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anxiety Recovery Podcast. I have a very special guest today with me. His name is Dr. Ray. He's a doctor of clinical psychology and author of All It Takes Is One: Drop Your One Big Hidden Belief and Master Your Life. And we're going to be talking all about PTSD, how to connect back to your intuition, after PTSD or just in general with dating, because tapping into your intuition really will revolutionize your careers, your success, your relationships, and just your day to day life in general. But I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast today, Dr. Ray.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say the doctor thing.
I almost did. I almost did.
I
His
totally
last
called
name is
it.
Doctor.
It's actually Doktor. I might not even know the right way to pronounce my own name. I've heard it many different uh, versions of it, but it's Doktor. But even probably I'm botching it. So there you go. But typically people will go, doctor, because they're thinking of like a song. Uh,
That's
So.
so funny.
Yeah.
I hear you there. Well, awesome. Can you share a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Well, I work as, I guess the title would be a life and relationship coach. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I got into what I'm doing pretty much like everyone else by my own healing journey. I It's in my book also as well, but I'm not going to keep going. I know it frustrates me when you hear authors go, "That's in my book, that's in my book," and like listeners are like, "Okay, but I might not read your book. Just share it with me." Uh, I grew up, my parents had a lot of their struggles where they grew up literally through poverty during the Great Depression. My mom was hiding in caves when she was 9 years old when the Japanese and Americans were fighting on Okinawa. And so I grew up with parents who were well adjusted, but they had like the survival mindset. So there was this kind of stress that was going on. And then my dad was in the military for 30 years. And if any of you have seen the Hurt Locker, where the man cannot adjust, the military guy who dismantles bombs, and he's in his home, and it's like where he misses that adrenaline rush. Sorry, I have to work on my adrenals. That's where that's slipped. But there was this kind of like this stress in our house. There was love, but there's stress, and that impacted me. And there's more to that, but that led to me drinking, getting a couple DUIs, having to see a drug and alcohol counselor. And I always remember what Jim said, and that was, I don't know if you have a drinking problem, but you create problems when you drink.
Mm.
And that stuck. That statement stuck with me. And that's when I started seeing a therapist in my early 20s. And that led to me really enjoying this work and then becoming mentored by Dr. Morris Netherton. He is the one who trained Tony Robbins teachers. So he was around a long time ago. And I guess I became who I am now there's a much more, but I want to fill up your podcast show with all of that other stuff. They can find that in the book. Okay. Okay.
You're so funny. I love how you're literally like mocking other people. You're like, you can find the book, find it in the book, and you're laughing. You're so funny. Yeah, that sounds like, your parents' upbringing really brought you to who you are now and who you want to be. And so it sounds like that's just been really, really impactful, just being mentored by people. And I know we're talking about intuition, but I would love to hear more about your story of what maybe led you to drinking and how that impacted your intuition.
Oh, I can go deeper than that. I had two near-death experiences. One when I was 6, I fell 3 stories, and the other one when I was 16, and I overdosed on PCP. And so that gave me the opportunity to see that there was something underneath the veil, and that from there I never had death anxiety. So I always knew that there was something greater. So that's probably what really led me to have a heightened intuition, but I didn't have the support to understand it. And what I come to learn also, which we'll share here, is that if a person has unhealed trauma to where they see things in a negative way, when they tap into spirit, and we're talking about where it's neutral, they'll maybe interpret that as something negative. What I mean by that is, so what happens often, particularly like say when someone's being perpetrated, that they'll dissociate. And so they'll recall how they saw what was happening from above. So they basically leave their body. That way they can endure the pain and everything else. But oftentimes they don't come back. Or they just somehow are afraid to stay in their body. And so what I notice with people who experience trauma, it can go different ways. With some people, they're really out there. They're not grounded. You've even seen probably people who are supposedly really spiritual, and they don't seem really grounded or earth, and they're not integrated. Then you have those who have been hurt. They're so fixated on like ground themselves to physical reality, like locking the doors, carrying pepper spray to where they're so bound to earth, they're so dense, they can't connect to spirit. And therefore they're locked in that position. So a big part of what I like to teach, particularly like on this in this conversation, is just recognizing that when you are unhealed, it can be channeled in negative ways, but it's not inherently bad. And that if a person's checked out, doesn't mean that's wrong also. It's just recognizing, or maybe ask them the question, are you afraid to come back down to earth? What do you need to trust? How do you need to feel safe? Yeah.
That's a very powerful distinction of like kind of the differences of, when you're quote unquote too grounded, when you're getting into those OCD like behaviors of locking your door 30 times, or
Mm-hmm.
making sure, I know this is a big one for women, making sure that your hair straightener is unplugged 30 times. That's
Mm-hmm.
when you're too grounded in this physical reality. But then other people who might be spiritual or in that type of lens, now they're way out there and they're not really grounded here in their physical body. So, can you share a little bit more on how your intuition can be really hindered when you've experienced trauma?
Absolutely. So if you've had some type of, I've seen it more with sexual abuse and those who have been abused by family members. And so imagine an infant who is innocent and they're learning about life through these people who they're supposed to trust. And then imagine the mixed messages because these people also will say, don't put your hand on the hot stove. And it prevents this child from burning his or her hands. Uh, and then that same parent or that same family member touches them in an inappropriate way or is drinking on the couch and is just wasted and this venom comes out of his or her mouth. So imagine as a child, you have mirror neurons, which you form your sense of self through their facial gestures and their behaviors. You also are learning through just observing. You're like a sponge. And then also you're seeking validation for your survival, such as if they don't hear your cry, you are sitting there with a wet diaper or you're hungry. So there's this codependency you have on these people that you're supposed to trust. But recognize what I'm saying also. What would be the interpretation? The interpretation would be mixed messages. Can I trust them? Can I trust myself? Is this the right thing? Is this not the right thing? So imagine that become the identity where this person who has been traumatized hasn't developed a strong sense of self and being able to have a confident yes or no, a confident yes or no. So most people who end up keep getting traumatized will date people because that are toxic because they don't have a strong yes or no, therefore they lack healthy boundaries. Okay. So now imagine that person who's been traumatized by people they're supposed to trust. When they go out in the world, they second guess themselves. So I've seen people have like maybe a spiritual awakening by doing plant medicine, but they haven't done any therapy or it was like too much too soon. They're excited and all of a sudden they're going, I think it was something evil. Maybe whether or not they picked up on something dark or not, that was what it was kicking up also was still their unhealed shadows. So they have difficulty discerning from whether or not it was from, say, the ceremony or it's from within, whether it was really a dark entity or it was something within. And so it's very important for us to clear and heal that so we have a stronger yes or no within ourselves and healthier boundaries. And until we feel, say, grounded and safe to earth, and we feel like we have some type of support, it could be more challenging and scary for a person to move up into the higher dimensions because if I go out, who is going to be there for me? If I go out, am I safe? And if I go out, will I come back and still be integrated with as who I am or even better? Because the fear could be is that I can lose my mind. Then who am I? Will I be able to take on the responsibilities I have for my children to so people who have been traumatized, they've worked, if they're doing some of the work, they've worked so hard to keep their job. They work so hard to not drink. They work so it's like to leave what they have, that physical body, which has worked so hard to just get through with life, to surrender that, to let go of that identity could be very scary. But until you let go of that identity, it's very hard to transcend and to trust your intuition because what you're given into is trusting your fear and history.
Mm, that is very powerful of just those two aspects of ourselves that, one, because we learned to second guess ourselves because we had those maybe inconsistent caregivers or caregivers who were consistent in treating us in a poor way. And you
Yes.
mentioned like almost in a way hypervigilance as well. Like you're
Hmm.
like because a child needs to be, especially if we're raised with a parent or parents who are alcoholic or narcissistic or emotionally unavailable, you have to kind of amp up that intuitive sense so that you can sense, am I safe? Am I not? So, what would be a way that people who are listening, maybe if they're struggling with being really hyper vigilant to the actions and facial expressions and everything of other people, how can they really work on that part that is hyper vigilant so that they can feel more of that sense of self in their body and grounded?
Well, the first step is recognizing that you're going to have to experience that within. You're going to have to trust yourself over anyone else. It's going to have to be your body, your rules. And I'll give you an example because I'm in a partnership with a woman where she's a coach also. Like my
Mhm.
girlfriend's pretty amazing at what she does. However, when she was in college, she discovered that her father actually was gay. He died of AIDS. And she didn't know until I think maybe 3 months before his death. And so everything she had come to know about her father, the masculine, men in general, listen to how I'm saying that. So here's someone who wasn't physically abused, like we were talking about. This is not someone who had an alcoholic parent. This is someone who felt flat out that her entire childhood maybe was a lie. Pretty. And so imagine me in this partnership with her. And I'm bringing this up because this will bring it home. And just imagine if here I'm trying to lead the relationship, or she'll second guess my decisions because she can't trust her own, because she couldn't trust her father. You can see how this can show up in projections in relationships as well. And so why would she trust me? After all, I'm a man. Why would she trust me? After all, especially with the Me Too movement, there's a lot of twisted men out there. Okay. So there's also, even women who've not been perpetrated, there's a vibrational collective narrative in which a lot of women are experiencing. And that is where, can I trust myself, in this world? Can I trust myself in a parking structure? Can I trust? But listen to that. It typically is more about people. Can I trust myself around men? To my girlfriend, can I trust this man? It really starts with this. Can I trust my own intuition? Can I trust my heart now? What do I need to know about myself and love about myself that I can start making good decisions? How can I validate myself every day that I'm making the right choice? The subtle things, such as getting to the store a little bit earlier to beat the crowd. That was a win. My intuition said, just leave 5 minutes earlier. Just little things. To how can I trust that I can say no and that everything will be fine? How can I trust that if it's not the right decision, I could just make a new decision? To how much of my behavior is tied into people pleasing, therefore I become constricted when I want to say something because I feel like I need to make it perfect then. To can I trust if this relationship doesn't go well, that it'll be okay. The worst case scenario is that I just keep going to gym anyway. I keep hanging out with my friends. And I live my life anyway. So the map has to change. The life philosophies about relationship has to change. And more often, when people have trust issues, it's projected on what had happened in the past. It's casting blame on all the people who are found out by the Me Too movement. It's all these different things when it's not taking personal responsibility and turning around and going, what do I need to do to trust myself in this? What can I do? And that's when change begins. And so even with my girlfriend, she would take this information and go, wow, like I really gave my power away to my dad. I really gave my power away to other men I dated. I gave away my power, and give away your power is that you just trust their decision over your own. Stop that unless it's aligned.
That is so powerful, and wow, I can see how that would have felt like almost like a betrayal in a way that your girlfriend didn't know this side of her father, and it was like
Mm,
it sounds like she was very blindsided, and I could see how that would really create distrust and dis-ease within her own self, some own internal turmoil,
mhm,
especially with the masculine and with men. If someone's listening to this and they have been betrayed in the past by their parents, by partners, or even just by themselves in their own decision making because they made some of these decisions coming from this traumatized inner child, how would you guide them to help them trust their own intuition again?
well, now I'm going to refer to my book. There's a section in there that talks about the main 11 influencers that have collectively shaped most of us. As an example, whether it's a specific educational system, a specific culture, uh, religion, things like that, we have come to believe things that were never originally ours. And so the first step is recognizing, like, who are we? Like, what beliefs are truly ours? What is authentically aligned with who we are right now? And are we acting in that version of ourselves? Now, the way that ties into what you asked about how I would help someone, many people will come to me as a client and say, I have been traumatized and I have trust issues. Well, what ends up happening is that when we step back from a higher perspective, we also recognize You didn't trust yourself in the first place ever. You didn't even know what to trust. Why did you trust this? In other words, what they recognize is that if they heal this trauma, they're also going to need some inner awareness of the direction they want to go. And so sometimes the secondary gain to hang on to trauma or the pain body is it's an identity. It's all we've come to know. So it's recognizing that if I let go of this, then who am I? So you need to know that you're going to be okay. And if you're to say, I don't know, I don't trust that, I can ask, well, what part of you? The part that you've come to know, or the part that's present right now that is curious and open to the changes that are going to happen in your life? And so people will often go to their pain story as why they haven't moved forward. And this is triggering for a lot of people what I'm about to say here. All right. And that is this: it's typically not the trauma itself that creates the challenges in your life. Typically, it's not the trauma itself that created the PTSD. Typically, it's not the trauma that going directly to it and talking about that actually heals your story. It is the experience of how you were supported and understood it. And if it didn't make sense and it was still confusing, years later, no wonder why you have PTSD. It is how you were supported through the process, how you were loved, how you loved yourself, and what was that mirror, that reflection of those who supported you, such as a broken mirror would be a cop saying, well, look how you dressed. What else do you expect would happen? A parent looking at you, oh my God, how could you put yourself in that position? Like judgment and shame, to even going to say the first time a therapist, and it being a male therapist, and this has happened where the woman's sharing her story and she feels like he's a predator. So oftentimes it's really about that. And so, as an example, what would be traumatic for a lot of people, I'll give you an example. I can't believe I'm gonna say this. It's actually a short story in a book. Because I do know this. My son and his mother had a gun pulled out on them when he was 3 years old. Okay? His mother, who has been in experiences like this, I'm not going to get into her story, um, reported this to me, and this is the experience that led to me taking him on full time. So I've raised him full time on my own since he's around 4. Okay. And before then, it was like 50-50. And when it happened, my son was clueless because he had no reference point to what this meant, that a gun can kill someone, that this is dangerous. There's no association. Remember, he's 3 years old. He hasn't learned that much about life. 6 months after the incident, um, he brought up, he just out of the blue, he said, these these men dressed in gorilla suits took my mom's purse. And I said, really? And I said it in a loving way. So men in the gorilla suits, that's his interpretation of an innocent moment. Smiling wasn't traumatic. About 2 years later, he starts telling some people about it because he learned about it more from me. Kind of, it was very innocent. He wasn't traumatized at all. And he started talking about it from a perspective as if he was consciously aware. He says, yeah, it was kind of dangerous and bloody. I said, Max, I go, you're changing the story by what he was seeing, by cartoons, into other conversations. Meaning that if I would have taken him to a therapist, or if I would have taken, if he would have spoken to an adult and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened to you. That must have been traumatic. You poor thing," they would have instilled a narrative of the experience in an unhealed, unhealthy way. Max is untouched from it. Nothing. It's not a bad memory. It's nothing. We laugh about it now. It's actually in the book. That little experience there. So the reason I'm sharing this is that I've worked with clients. We're talking about I've worked with over 500 women who've been raped. All of them. The way that it was integrated was not the best way. The integration of it. Therefore, it was unresolved. And therefore, those are the triggers. That's the PTSD. But remember, the initial trauma itself typically is not what caused it. It's everything else afterwards. The judgment, the shame, not feeling safe in the world. Yeah.
100% because you're making those beliefs about yourself because you don't understand why it's happening, that the world is unsafe, men are unsafe, women are unsafe. And wow, it's just like that's such a powerful story to really share. Hey, this is what, like, that's not what causes PTSD or someone to be traumatized. It's their interpretation, how they integrated it, that support. Even today, I was giving a session on a client, and they were telling me, wow, I felt so alone as these memories were coming up. I felt so alone and so sad, but I just feel so grateful that you're here with me. And that really helped them to rewrite their own stories of feeling worthy of love, feeling worthy of support. And that is that mirror. Like having that mirror is truly how we heal. And that is just so powerful, of the projections that our mind makes up and the stories that our mind makes up. So if someone listening has some limiting beliefs around men, I can't trust men, or I can't trust women, or I just can't trust my partner in general, how would you go about helping them work through that belief?
Well, so it could be simple sentences like this. So, do you want to work through something with me in real time? Like you be
Sure,
the
let's get into it. Let's get into it. Because as you were talking about this is
client?
so vulnerable. But um, my last partner, he was a great person, but it ended up not working out. And it turned out that he was avoidantly attached. And for me, I have been, obviously, for me, I want to take time off and just continue focusing on my business and all of these things. But also for me, it feels hard to put myself out there in the dating scene, because even that part of me feels like, well, it felt right in the moment with him. And I can understand why, in certain ways where he felt familiar. But for me, it feels like a part of me doesn't trust
Yeah.
my decision making abilities, especially when it comes to dating. And I've worked through a lot of that, but it's still something that stops me from going out into the world with dating
This
again.
is really good. So, there's one thing that you can trust in this moment is that the outcome you might have might be bad. Listen to how I'm saying that. So that's a life philosophy, that's a belief. So if anyone had that map, such as if it doesn't last a while, or if he does not become the Prince Charming I want, then I must have failed, and therefore I can't trust my decisions. Whereas if a person were to embody this belief, relationships are an opportunity to see where I'm at in each moment of life, and that my true attraction to a partnership is one in a kindest and most loving way can mirror those parts of myself that can help me grow and learn and expand to be a better version of myself. That is what excites me, whether it lasts for 3 months or for 5 years or 10 years or forever. Now, if there's this, but that makes me sad because I would want it to last longer than 3 months or a year. Why would you want that? Because, it's just so hard. How do you know it's so hard if you're totally authentic in that relationship and it ends in a very loving way. What would be hard about that? Well, how could you have fear being projected on the unknown of a version of yourself that's being open and authentic? And so it's your old part of the old version of yourself that doesn't still even trust that itself. Did you hear that? I went a little bit deeper, a little more expansive in like the life philosophy. So you are set up with that type of belief system to fail because it's basically saying that it's either good or bad. Because even the way that you said it in this, thank you for being vulnerable, it's like he was blah, 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 but, you know what I mean? But it also helped you now understand that I need to develop better trust in myself. What if he showed up just for you to crystallize that more so also you can trust more of your intuition? What a great gift.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what resonated most for me is like, and I'm noticing like some heat in my face, like even what you said, like you were being very authentic in that moment. And I have a gratitude practice and I focus on those things, and still I still look at him with in loving ways, not in a trauma bonded way, but it's also like I really appreciate that he did give me a lot of disconfirming experiences for me around sex, around respect, around kindness. He might have not showed up for me in the way that I would have desired at the end, but I was still authentic to myself the entire relationship, and I really put my heart out there. And I still think of a very special time where we said I love you to each other, and it felt so right. It felt so real. And it was still one of like the most special moments of my life. And I think and even like as we were breaking up, a part of me there was that self-blame part that wanted to blame, because I'm so aware of all of this, like, oh, this is my fault, blah blah blah, in some way not my fault, but in a way like, oh, I maybe like I attracted this person. And while that's true, it's also like people can decide that they want something and then later they decide this isn't what I want, and it doesn't
Mhm.
have to mean anything about me or anything like that.
Yes.
But he said towards the end, it's not your fault. Like, this isn't your fault. This is just something that it's it just didn't work out, and it's not anything that you did wrong. And
Mhm.
for me, I had old beliefs that my needs were too much, and I always shared my needs. And even towards the end, he said, your needs are never too much. And that really has shifted my brain a little bit in making me feel that, it's that mirror that my needs do matter, even if he couldn't give them to me.
What's interesting about this, I'm going to do something with you. Okay. I'm going to put both your hands over your chest here like this. Yep. I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to, for a moment, think of your ex-partner in the most loving way. Think about what you miss. Think about the good times, the great sex. And just for a moment, we're not going to stay here, but just for a moment, I know you can do this, is just tap into that parallel reality version of yourself that experiences loss. So, from this higher perspective, just connect to that version of yourself that might be feeling bad for that in a moment. You might be looking at old pictures and getting sad, even though there's a logical part saying, I didn't do anything wrong. This is the best thing that was supposed to happen, or it was meant to happen. And just notice that feeling of the change, the disappointment, And just notice that before you met him, you were trying to avoid feeling that again. You're trying to avoid. So trying to avoid that, wouldn't you attract a person who had avoidant attachment issues? So he helped you see what you're trying to avoid. So now just move right into what you try to avoid with love and love yourself more openly. And everything that you would project onto him that he is, just recognize there might be an aspect of yourself or maybe many things that were like that, such as maybe you don't have avoidant attachment, but you do contract your heart a little bit. Maybe you're willing to lean in a little bit more and when there's difficulty in a relationship, but there's also a part of you afraid to get hurt. Imagine it be where you might have one foot in and one foot out. Because if this guy truly was an avoidant type of personality, he would have avoided you altogether. That's the funny part of it. So he wasn't that avoidant to kind of go, hey, maybe I can try it again. So he has one foot in, one foot out. And just notice, was I the same way? And if I lean fully in, if I jump fully in, if I go all out and say this man doesn't catch me or it doesn't end up with maybe the outcome I hope, well, what is the state of consciousness I would want anyway of the outcome, with or without him? Listen to that. What is the state of consciousness I'd want to have with or without him? Whether that outcome from a physical human being, which I can't even expect a human being to be those things for me, what would be the outcome of my consciousness? And that would be this: I'd be awake. I would be curious about life. I would still smell the flowers on my way to get a coffee. I'd be laughing with my girlfriends. I would still lay out by a pool and enjoy the sun. I would still be in a place of abundance. So go out on dates and be those things anyway, whether you see that person one time or not. Self-care isn't just a ritualistic experience where, okay, I'm gonna take me time and get my nails done or get a massage. It's recognizing I'm also gonna let go of this codependent idea of what men are supposed to do for me, and I'm gonna do it for myself anyway, because when I'm not in that state of consciousness, I'm more attractive anyway. I'm more open anyway, and I'd be more likely to attract that type of partnership because I'm vibrating that. How's that feel? How's that look?
Yeah, should I open my eyes now?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah, that was really powerful. I even like got teary-eyed there. That was really powerful. Like when you said like think about the good times, like my eyes were like
Mhm.
watering. But yeah, I think that's a very good point of what you mentioned, like being super vulnerable. It's like that is what you mentioned, like saying, well, he wasn't fully avoidant because he got in a relationship with you, but also he was showing you he had one foot out, one foot in. And so did I, really, when I think about it at the
Mhm.
beginning. So it's like that was clearly mirrored back. And it's like, what if you could just attempt to let go of that part that wants it to look a certain way, to be a certain way? It has to last for a certain amount of time. When in reality, like, he was great for the time being. What if I could show up in that energy from abundance of I'll be great with or without you, like you mentioned, pretty much is what I
Well,
got
I'm
from
going
it.
through some real-time experiences right now. So I am in a coupleship that's been going on for about, that almost sounds Hollywood. Anyway, for about 2 years, 5 months, and I am possibly moving, and there's a possible chance that my partner is not going to join me, which is, okay. But in the eyes of social media, we look like the perfect couple, like this power dynamic, because we're very alike. She's always sharing information like myself, and I'm here's the thing, I'm sharing this, and you in real time are hearing this before most of our friends. It's not like we need to announce it. It's just a process because we're both very transparent about it. And so you might ask, what's the reason why, and like what would that create, and so forth. And so the thing is, it's true that I might go there and she might not go to the same area I'm going to, but this area really lights me up more than where I'm living. And I'm seeing if it does for my son also. And my son is my number one priority. That's just it. He's my priority. And it doesn't matter if I meet the ideal woman who that I'm in love with, who I'm attracted to, and that we have great sex. Because if it's really aligned for me and my belief system, is that it'll align with my family, and we'll be able to do this together. So it's not the typical 3D, are you willing to have a long-term or long distance relationship? We're not really thinking about that. It's more of a process, just saying, what do you feel about this? She wants to visit also. We're not going to extreme like fear of like, oh my God, something is going to happen. It's going to be bad. It's like, I'm still going to keep this house also, but we're not hanging on to something that it cannot, if I share that I'm more excited about this other place, what's going to happen? If I hold back, resentment's going to build up. uh, Other things might happen. And so we have to have these authentic, open, transparent conversations, because when we are in our hearts, what connects to that is more of that will conspire for the relationship to take the direction that it's supposed to, together or apart. So her and I in real time can go, yeah, it does scare me. That's a real human feeling I'm having. To also, I can see why you're excited about that. I'm excited for you. I love you. I want to support you. To, oh my God, there's parts of me where, Ray, I feel like, you going there, I could feel this abandonment stuff. Why am I having this? Like I own my own business. I'm self-made, and that's what the relating ship is for. The relating ship is for, because that stuff was there before I met her. Do you see where I'm coming from? So we didn't, we're still co-creating this beautiful relationship. To the typical 3D people, and there's no judgment. They're like, you guys are perfect. Why are you not married yet? Like, how's getting marriage solidify forever unfolding consciousness? How does, how would this, is that the next level up? I mean, we have a very rich relationship. We're open about everything. So I feel like I could be myself. We keep expanding, and possibly me moving there is part of that expansion. And so if we talk openly, of course, while I'm moving there in that direction, maybe she might start doing other things over here. Like she goes to the women's night thing on Mondays here, or she'll fill up her time with things that, because I'm not there, not because she's lonely, because just logistically we both said, hey, I'm going to be back east for a while. And we collaborate. We take care of ourselves. We take personal responsibility. So whether you live together, whether you are long distance, whether you're just dating for the first 3 months, or it's been a while, it's trusting that if I am going to exist as I am, and I want the full potentiality of my spiritual humanness to show up authentically, then I have to communicate fearlessly from this space, and trust that this partner will align in that moment and we keep growing or not. But I have to be true to me.
Mm, absolutely, absolutely. Because regardless of what it looks like to other people, you're coming back to this is what feels expansive for me, for my son, for
Mhm.
what excites me. And if someone like your girlfriend that doesn't align, then maybe there's another reason why she needs to stay there. You need to stay, she needs to stay here. You need to stay there. But it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with your relationship. That's just where you both are at. And that means coming back to trust, trusting yourself, trusting your heart. And it sounds like you're there of like, regardless of what happens, I trust myself, I trust my partner, and that's why it will work out whether we're together or not. It's still going to work out in the way it's meant to. And
Yeah,
that's
a lot.
really how you connect back to your intuition.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, people will say my issues are financial issues, my issues are relationship issues, my issues are I don't talk to my family, my problem is I live in a wrong place. Like all these different things that we'll project onto as blame. And even I've done my inner work about this, like such as I will visit a couple more times to this area to make sure it wasn't my vacation vibe there, to make sure that it's aligned with my son also, to whatever I think I'm going to be doing over there, I have to start practicing it here. Well, I'll give you, if people listen to this, they might think, well, what the hell are you talking about? Well, I live in Ashland, Oregon. It's just really sleepy. It's less urban. There's nothing to do. And so it's great if you're like I feel like a Griswold dad, like it's all about the family and driving us, like your kid to soccer games and blah, blah, blah. But I'm a little bit edgier. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm wilder and I want to see live bands and go to restaurants to hear people are hypersensitive, like really sensitive. So I find myself a little bit like walk on the eggshells of my son also, like where he gets in trouble for his sarcasm. We're like, so over there, I felt a little bit more accepted. I felt like it's not so much work to like people are not so serious over there. So that's the idea. And that's important to me because, you know, where we feel received will probably glow more. It's not conditional. It's more like I just noticed like, wow, when I was there, it felt so much easier and more open. So, of course, that's going to do something for my spirit and everything else. And yeah, as you know, when we're excited and we're in our peak state, I mean, amazing things happen.
Oh my
Abundance
goodness.
attracts abundance. Yeah.
Mm, absolutely. And it sounds like that's really how you connect back to your intuition. Notice that you said feel more open. I feel more, it sounds almost just more like yourself, like you're able to feel accepted, to be received, to be welcomed in this new place. And that's how you connect back to your intuition, is connecting back to your sensations, connecting back to your feelings, connecting back to what are you noticing in your body in this very moment, so that you are able to trust yourself, because anything that feels icky or wrong or off, that's your intuition guiding you of what's your yes and what's your no, and that's transferable to where you live, to your
Mhm.
business, to your job, to relationships. And this will be my last question for you. What do you feel? How can people differentiate between anxiety and intuition?
So, well, first off, if you're raising your voice at your children, it's probably anxiety and not your excitement. If your blood pressure is up or you need to smoke a lot of weed, there's probably anxiety involved there. So excitement is where you don't feel the need to eat. Like somehow you forget about time and that things in your life, whether they're challenging or not, they appear as though they're conspiring with you. So for example, I just did a big book launch and it did really well. I became a bestseller in several categories. And that was Wednesday. And my son noticed that I was a little bit stressed, and but the difference is that like I was also pretty relaxed. Uh, when I say stressed, like he just see my mind was filled with something a little bit, but I was handling it. I got done with it. And, but through the whole process, when we were doing it, there were some people working with me, and they were saying, it doesn't seem like you have this sense of urgency. Like even, I know you hope that you become a bestseller, but no matter what happens, like, it's going to be okay. Like talking to me like I would be devastated if I didn't. I'm not, my sense of self wasn't like identify with being a bestseller. Honestly, I didn't even give a shit. And that's what I was telling most people. I go, you know what? Good is happening already. My son and I live in an amazing area already. I am safe already. Therefore, if this is going to become from my excitement, then I have to be enjoying everything I created already. Does that make sense? So if I was raising my voice with my son, if I was bumping heads with strangers, if working with my crew felt like effort, I would know, ooh, it's my anxiety driving us, not my passion, excitement. I'm stressed out. My nervous system is running a show, not me. Whereas excitement and intuition, it just flows. It's easier. Even my partner I was working with, like there was times he had to cancel. It happened right before this. Actually, I was on a call right before this one here, and we're setting up another container for my book, and it's great. And he says, "Well, we can't talk until Wednesday." And there was this moment I went, "I'll trust Wednesday." I mean, because so far everything's worked out, but there's been times like where I'd call him up and he said, "Are you stressed, Ray?" I went, "Oh, maybe I am." So he'd always counteract that by being sometimes even a little bit nonchalant. So there, the difference is this: it just when you're your excitement, when you're really happy and your heart is open, there's no urgency. You trust the divine timing. You trust the delays are conspiring with you. When you're experiencing anxiety, you are in survival, you're stressed out, and you feel hungry, you feel pissed off, you're raising your voice, you're hitting traffic. Things seem like effort because you're creating, the situation to feel like effort.
Mm. Wow, that was such a fantastic explanation of the difference between anxiety and intuition. So, Dr. Ray, where can people find your book and find you and connect with you?
So the name of my book is called All That Takes Is One. And I know you're going to provide the link. Uh, they can go to that landing page there and find my book there. Of course, it's on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and everything else. And then my website, which is raydoktor.com. That's RAYDOKTOR.com. And from there, you can navigate. It's very user friendly to learn how to work with me. And I'm also going to be doing group coaching. That's what we're working on. Because one thing I learned from that book, and after reading over 500 self-help books, most of us just put that book down, we dog ear it, and then maybe we'll get to the exercises. Or I remember being a beginner going like, what? Where's my tribe? I'm awake now, which I wasn't. And so this, we think, oh my God, I got special powers now. I'm out of the matrix. Then you buy 50 books for your friends and no one reads it, and that kind of sucks. Uh, but um, I learned that people wanted their hand held. Like, how do I do this? This sounds great. How do you do it? So the group we're creating is for that. For coaching and all that I'm sharing to be a lot more accessible for the lay person or the more advanced.
Wow, that is so exciting. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for being on. This was just incredibly, incredibly powerful. And, I think this was really like I've shared a lot about my story and all these things on my podcast, but never people see me cry on my podcast. So I'm just so grateful that you were here. And it was just a really, really powerful episode. Thanks for being
Well,
on.
it was amazing. Thank you. Trust in me. See, you're up leveling already, right on your own show in real time. So maybe you now have your whole body through the door.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Ray.
All right. Thank you very much.
Hi, it's Dr. Ray here, and thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your support, and you are the one who drives this channel. So if you like to be notified when new videos come out, please subscribe to my channel and push the bell button so you are notified when new videos come out. I appreciate you supporting this channel.